in the post-internet age, we have shown great interest in Sumerian and Babylonian myths. One of the reasons for the growing interest in these mythologies is the search for the origins of religions, but another reason is the theories of alien gods. Some authors who accept the creation myths in Sumerian mythology as true and argue that humans were created or genetically modified by a group of extraterrestrials have led to an increased interest in the subject. This field, also known as the ancient astronaut theory, has largely been fueled by Zecharia Sitchin's translations of tablets and his Earth Chronicles book series. However, Sitchin's tablet translations have been criticized by scholars who are experts in Sumerian, Akkadian, Assyrian, and Babylonian languages as inaccurate and lacking a scientific basis. At the center of Sitchin's translations is a group of mythological gods known as the Anunnaki, who are the descendants of the sky god Anu, later known as An in Assyrian and Babylonian myths, and the earth goddess Kai. According to Sitchin, the Anunnaki are extraterrestrial and created humanity by combining their DNA with that of Homo erectus. They did this in order to use humans as slaves to extract gold and other precious metals. But what do the cuneiforms really say about Anunna, the Anunnaki, and other mythological beings? Is Sitchin's writing accurate and consistent? How were they and what they did depicted in the ancient world? First of all, the term Anunnaki does not mean descendants or heavenly ones, as modernists like Sitchin claim. Like so many of Sitchin's translations, this one is completely inaccurate and fabricated. Modern interpretations based on such translations today are based on Sitchin's own publications. At this point, let me remind you again that many scholars who are experts in ancient languages have warned against Sitchin's distorted so-called translations. Contrary to fabricated distortions, Anunnaki is the term used for a group of gods meaning children of An, seed of Anu, noble blood, or noble children. The most prominent of these gods are Enlil, Enki, Ninhursag, Nanna, Utu, and Inanna. I would now like to address the arguments of Sitchin and his followers who argue that we were created by the Anunnaki. There is a beautiful saying, "A fool threw a stone into a well, and 40 wise men couldn't get it out." Since Sitchin's books, filled with fabricated translations and distortions, became popular and sold well by promoting the story that the Anunnaki created us, many others followed in his footsteps, claiming that the Anunnaki were extraterrestrial beings who came to Earth with flying vehicles, astronaut suits, and similar equipment. However, there is no such description of the Anunnaki in any Sumerian literature. Sumerian art never depicted the Anunnaki as extraterrestrial gods. The winged discs and crescents, which many people think belong to the Anunnaki because of Sitchin, do not actually represent the Anunnaki, but the major sun and moon gods. I don't know if those who poison people's minds by making videos like, "The Anunnaki are real," "The Anunnaki created us," "The Anunnaki came to Earth and mined the Earth," and getting hundreds of thousands of views should be ashamed, but Sitchin did not cite any Sumerian literature to support his popular theory about gold mining. It is worth repeating briefly. The man tells you, the Anunnaki came to Earth and mined gold and other minerals, but he cannot provide any source because there is no such Sumerian literature. Yet some of you believe in things that do not exist without questioning and researching them, just because they sound appealing to your ears. If you visit the Electronic Corpus of Sumerian Literature project, where many scholars from Oxford University have come together and uploaded Sumerian literature and do word searches, you will easily see that there is no such nonsense as ancient gods mining gold. Another distortion by Sitchin appears in his book, The 12th Planet. He argued that one of the titles exalting the god Ea, Enki, Bel Nimiki, which means Lord of Wisdom, should be translated as Lord of Mining. But there is no justification for such a translation, because no Sumerian literature associates Enki with gold mining. In fact, in the literature, Enki is characterized by knowledge and is therefore associated with wisdom. So Sitchin, as usual, gives words the meanings that suit the fiction he has in mind. And nobody except experts in the field of ancient languages will know, unless they look into it, whether he is distorting or not. Sumerian literature also tells us that Adama, humanity, was created to help the gods, because the minor gods, the cattle god Lahar and the grain goddess Ashnan, get drunk and stop providing food and clothing for the gods. Thus, as a solution, human beings are given breath, that is, human beings are created. Later, when humans reproduce and multiply, their noise disturbs the gods, especially Enlil, who is equivalent to Jehovah or Allah. So Enlil sends a flood to destroy them all. Enki, the wise god, immediately goes in secret and warns Ziusudra, the pious king of the city of Sippar, to build an ark, put the animals on board, and get ready. However, no tablet says that people were enslaved to extract gold. Again, no literature mentions that the Anunnaki came to Earth and did DNA studies on primitive man. It is all Sitchin's fabrication. His fabrications did not stop there. According to Sitchin, the reason the Anunnaki mined gold from Earth was to save the planet Nibiru, which lies beyond Pluto. This planet, he said, only passed through our solar system every 3,600 years. Experts with PhDs in Torah and ancient Semitic languages, and many others, such as Benno Landsberger, a respected German Assyriologist, have examined how the word Nibiru appears in all cuneiform writings. Their research revealed that the word was used in relation to 4 different subjects. These were the planets Jupiter and Mercury, the god Marduk, and an unidentified star. So Nibiru was sometimes described as a star and sometimes as a planet. Most of the times it was used as a planet was for Jupiter Marduk and only once for Mercury. The inescapable fact that emerged after the analysis was this: Nibiru was never ever described in any Sumerian literature as a planet beyond Pluto. In some literature, Nibiru was described as a fixed star, while in others it was said to change position and cross the sky. Sumerian records show that the Sumerians knew only 5 planets. Since they also considered the sun and the moon as planets, the total number was 7. They did not have a deep and perfect knowledge of the solar system, as Sitchin argues. It was the same in Babylon. One of the examples of this is the Mul-Apin tablets, which were compiled around 1000 BC with the observation data inherited from the Sumerians and reflect the state of Sumerian-Babylonian astronomy. In these 2 tablets, the orbits of the 7 planets Venus, Jupiter, Mars, Saturn, Mercury, the Sun and the Moon are recorded, and the number of stars, sometimes 36 and sometimes 66, is recorded. There is no other planet in any of them. Furthermore, no Sumerian literature states that the Anunnaki lived on the planet Nibiru or that it was a habitable planet. These are also Sitchin's fabrications. Another important point is that Nibiru is observed every year in Sumerian literature. So Sitchin's assertion that it appears once every 300-600 years is also complete garbage. Sitchin did not stop there in creating the Anunnaki religion. In his book, The 12th Planet, he presented the Sumerian cylindrical relief coded VA243 as proof that the Sumerians received information about the solar system from an extraterrestrial place. This tablet thus became quite famous among proponents of Sitchin's theories. But what was the basis of Sitchin's argument? Interpreting the symbolic image in the upper left corner of the relief, he concluded that it represented the Sun and the 11 planets around it. However, as Michael Stephen Heiser, an expert on ancient Semitic languages, points out, Sumerian art always used 6, 7, or 8-pointed celestial bodies to represent the stars in our solar system, which are independent of the Sun. In fact, the Sumerians represented the Sun, or Utu, their sun god, with the sun's rays radiating in waves from between his arms or from the center of a circle. Later, the Babylonians also represented it with a winged solar disk. The seal in question has none of these symbols. In other words, the celestial body in the center is not the sun, but another star. This is because it is incompatible with the solar symbols found on hundreds of tablets and cylinder seals reflecting Sumerian Babylonian art. Sumerians and Mesopotamians represented the sun and stars side by side and distinct from each other, attributing each symbol to the sun god and other gods. There is no evidence to support Sitchin's argument. We can easily see this by looking at the archaeological evidence. Let's look at a few examples. Star, sun, moon, star, sun. Notice the difference between the sun and the star representations. The sun has waves of light, the star does not. Star, moon, sun. Look at the Nazi Marutash obelisk. Star on top, moon and sun below. Finally, let's look at the Shamash tablet. In the foreground is a representation of the sun casting rays around. I think these images clearly show the difference between the sun, the star and the moon in Mesopotamia, and I think they are sufficient. Anyone can search for more. They are proof that Sitchin twisted everything to fit his story, distorting the star drawing in ancient Near Eastern art to make it the sun. He spared no distortion or fabrication that suited him for the Anunnaki stories he wrote. Sitchin, of course, made other distortions and forced interpretations. For example, to support his story that the Anunnaki created humans, he argued that Elohim in the book of Genesis is plural, and therefore humans were created by the Anunnaki, not a single god, and that the relevant passages should be read in this way. But there is a problem. Obviously, he has not bothered to take Hebrew grammar into account or to investigate it. Because the word Elohim does not always mean gods in the plural. It is necessary to look at the meaning of the word with grammatical and contextual clues. The word Elohim can be singular or plural depending on the context of the text. Let's look at examples where it occurs in the singular. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The word Elohim here is singular because the verb bara, meaning to create, is masculine singular. Then God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." Elohim is also in the singular here, because the yomer meaning said is singular. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them. Elohim is again in the singular in this verse, because the verbs vayibra and bara, meaning created, are singular. Again, it can be easily seen that in some places is used as singular. On the other hand, of course, there are also places where it is used in the plural. Similarly, in Akkadian literature, the plural ilanu for gods is also used to refer to a single god. While there are singular usages, it is not correct to treat it as if it is always plural and to make the word useful for the Anunnaki story. Another of Sitchin's distortions concerns the meaning of the word Nephilim, which is described in religious literature as the giant children of angels who have intercourse with human women. He assumes that the word Nephilim comes from the Hebrew word nephal, which means to fall. Not only that, but in order to harmonize the word with his stories about the ancient astronauts and the Anunnaki, he stretches the meaning a bit and translates it as to go down. He then goes a step further and says that it means coming down from above. However, neither the Torah nor the Book of Enoch, which discusses the Nephilim in detail, says that the Nephilim fall from heaven or descend from above. Angels, the fathers of the Nephilim, descend to earth and have children with human women. These giant children are the Nephilim. They did not fall from somewhere. They were born on earth. So even if the word Nephilim comes from nephal, which means to fall, the word can at most mean spiritually fallen, to emphasize that they are evil beings. Because this race of giants born on earth are so evil and savage that they tear the human race to pieces and start eating them. Sitchin further argues that the Akkadian Shamu, the Hebrew Sham, the Sumerian Mu and Mi are related to flying vehicles and space travel. He even suggests that the Tower of Babel was actually a rocket-like flying vehicle and defines the Sumerian Mu as oval-topped, conical object or something that rises steeply. In fact, the meanings of the words in the thousands of cuneiform tablets that have been discovered have been compiled by many scholars who are experts in ancient languages, and some of them have even been compiled into a dictionary by an academic community. When you look at these, the only conclusion you will get is that Sitchin's translation of flying vehicle or flying saucer is nonsense and serves only his purpose. Sitchin's assertion that the Akkadian word shamu derives from the Sumerian word shumu, meaning the Mu One, is completely false, because there is no such word as shumu in Sumerian. The suffix shu in the pronoun in question is also of his own invention. Akkadian shamu does not mean the Mu One, and since the words shamamu and shamau are related to the sky, or a part of the sky, it is clear that shamu, which is very similar to them, is a word related to the sky. Akkadian shumu, like the Hebrew word sham, means name or fame. So when Sitchin talks about rocket vehicles in his books, he is completely full of shit. You don't even need to be an expert in ancient languages to understand Sitchin's rocket ship nonsense. For example, at what is written in the 11th chapter of the book of Genesis, which he says actually describes how to build rockets.
Now the whole world had one language and a common speech. As people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. They said to each other, "Come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly." They used brick instead of stone, and tar for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth." But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower the people were building. The Lord said, "If as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other." So the Lord scattered them from there over all the earth, and they stopped building the city. That is why it was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world. From there the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth.
As you can easily understand, people are building a city and a tower, not a shem, as Sitchin is making nonsense of. Again, as you can easily understand, the word shem has nothing to do with a rocket ship or a spaceship and means fame, reputation. When the people in the story start to build a city and the Tower of Babel, they boast that they are sham, meaning we will be famous. This is what Akkadian shumu means, fame, reputation. This is not what they are building anyway. They are building a migdal, a tower. Sitchin pushes the word shem to make rockets, but I think he doesn't want to see that what is really being built is the migdal, the tower. Let's get to the funnier part about the spacecraft. The Torah tells us that the tower was made of bricks and tar. What rocket ship or spacecraft is made of bricks and pitch? Sitchin makes up such inconsistent, baseless lies and nonsense in order to create the story of the Anunnaki created us. But why do you follow him without questioning or researching? With the likes of Sitchin or Eric von Daniken, the distortions and lies never end. For example, he argued that the inscription known as the Descent of Inanna even mentions Inanna wearing an astronaut's helmet on her head. The inscription in question reads as follows.
Inanna put her turban on her head, the crown of the steppe. She arranged the dark locks of hair across her forehead. She tied the small lapis beads around her neck, let the double strand of beads fall to her breast, and wrapped the royal robe around her body. She daubed her eyes with ointment called, "Let him come, let him come," bound the breastplate called, "Come, man, come," around her chest, slipped the gold ring over her wrist, and took the lapis measuring rod and line in her hand. Inanna set out for the underworld.
Forget about vocabulary, whether you know Sumerian or not. Read this article in its entirety. Could the word Shugara here be an astronaut's helmet, as Sitchin suggests? Isn't the text clearly describing Inanna's dressing up? Is Inanna an idiot to wear an astronaut's helmet on her head in preparation for space travel? But to dress up and wear a royal robe by tying beads around her neck and arranging some of them so that they hang on her chest? The goddess has a space helmet on her head, but the rest of her outfit consists of fabric and fancy beads? What kind of idiot would have an astronaut outfit with a space helmet, a necklace, and a royal robe? Dressed like a clown. If she is preparing for space travel, why does she say, "Come, my man, come," after adjusting the necklace on her chest? Yes, the Shugara is of course a headdress, the goddess Inanna is represented with a headdress on her head. But she is never depicted wearing a space helmet, as Sitchin is ridiculous and draws on page 136 of his book to suit his purpose. On the other hand, what is even more absurd is this. Inanna's descent into the land of the dead, also known as the Fall, has nothing to do with space travel. It tells of her journey to the lower world, the underworld, the land of the dead, to find her lover Dumuzi, July. The reason she says, "Come, my man, come," while getting ready, is to reflect her sadness and longing for her lover. The rest of the tablet is a very long account of her journey to the land of the dead, her experiences such as having to strip naked, and her return to the earth. After Sitchin baselessly took the word mu as a spaceship, he translated the Sumerian word mi as spacesuit, again in accordance with his story, because that is what suits him. I'm sure that hundreds of Assyriologists and Sumerologists had a laughing fit when they heard this absurd argument. How is it that even I, as a mythology buff, know that mi is a divine law or sacred decree, but Sitchin doesn't? Does he not know, or does he not want to know? In ancient mythologies, it was believed that many gods and goddesses traveled in ships in the sky. In other words, people on the ground and gods and goddesses in the sky had ships and boats. The Sumerian legend, in which Sitchin interprets the word mi as a spacesuit, also tells of Inanna's journey in a celestial ship. In the inscription Inanna and Enki, unlike some other legends, Inanna's father is Enki and he hangs the tablets on his daughter's chest. The following is written about this.
You have lifted the me, you have tied the me to your hands, you have gathered the me, you have attached the me to your breast. O queen of all the me, O radiant light, who with her hands grasps the seven me.
You'd have to be out of your mind to think that me here means spacesuit. Moreover, it does not even contain any mention of space travel. If someone who believes these lies takes the trouble to read the entire legend of Inanna and Enki, they can easily learn that the me's were divine decrees that Enki presented to Inanna as a gift. I would like to read the relevant passages directly here, but it is quite long. Since me is a divine decree on any subject, there are many me in Sumerian literature. The list goes on and on. Prostitution, sexual intercourse, descent into the world of the dead, art, the sanctuary, music, flooding, shepherding, kingship. Now what do these me's have to do with the spacesuit? Unless we are talking about a specific sexual fantasy, what does prostitution or sex have to do with the spacesuit? Similarly, the very long Sumerian inscription, Enki and the World Order, contains many of Enki's me's, his decrees. The word has nothing to do with anything like a spacesuit. The tying of decree or fate tablets to the chest is a Mesopotamian belief. It is a way of demonstrating the power and authority of the god or goddess. For example, in the Babylonian legend Enuma Elish, after Marduk kills Kingu and captures the tablets of destiny, he binds them to his chest, thus becoming the absolute ruler of the universe. For it is he who will now determine the order of the universe and the fate of the gods. It is of course important and good to investigate where our origins lie and to try to understand our place in the universe. However, the duo of Sitchin and Erich von Daniken, with their erroneous, unsourced, distorted and some might say tantalizing stories, have turned the ancient astronaut theory, which should normally be a field of research, into an industry, and have led to the rise of this theory. Ideas such as genetic engineering of human DNA, the fall of Nibiru, aliens coming to save humanity, and alien gods have been marketed for years. However, the basis of their narratives, as you can see here, is full of distortions, lies, and fabrications. Nevertheless, the Anunnaki religion they have created is growing and growing. Now let's separate the wheat from the chaff, because I can imagine the ridiculous comments that will come. Of course, we can take a lot of possibilities about our existence and think deeply about them. You can take a chance on the possibility that life on Earth may have begun under the influence of a life form from far away. You might even be inclined to see the Big Bang as a kind of cosmic engineering by an advanced alien civilization. You are free to consider all kinds of possibilities and theories. But it is one thing to think, and it is another thing to try to make it official by twisting, bending, and lying about all historical facts and information in order to fit the possibility, or theory you want to believe in. In this way, you deceive first yourself and then everyone you tell these things to. In my next works, I will explain the Anunnaki, the gods who are descendants of Anu, one by one. If you want to learn something real, you can watch it and benefit from it. But since it will not contain Sitchin's lies, I am sure it will not interest you much. What is the fact that this video, in which I am trying to tell the truth, will remain in low digits while lies are watched by hundreds of thousands and millions, if not proof that human beings are more prone to lies than truth, to what sounds good to their ears than honesty, to the supernatural than the real.